What if I told you that Ferrari has just discovered that during the entire 2025 season it built a car that inadvertently sabotaged Lewis Hamilton? What if the Abu Dhabi test was not just the end of the year, but the true beginning of their revolution? Stay, because what they saw in the telemetry left even Hamilton himself shocked. Hamilton began to modify his style. Instead of attacking the curbs hard, he had to start negotiating with the car. He changed his entry to a curve. He stopped squeezing the brake to look for a more fluid, more Leclerc line. In simple words, he started piloting like another pilot. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. Every time he tried to do what always worked for him, the car punished him with stalling, loss of traction, or slipping that took him away from the limit. In Melbourne, under mixed conditions, the conflict was clear. After a decent start, he dropped positions due to poor strategy and found himself trapped behind slower cars. He couldn't attack. I didn't have the rhythm to come back. And what hurt the most was not being left off the podium, but not being able to do anything to avoid it. Neither a wing change, nor a modification to the differential, nor even radio advice seemed to make a difference. Ferrari knew it. Hamilton knew it. But no one found the root of the problem. Internally, the team began to divide. Some engineers insisted that it was a matter of adaptation, that Hamilton needed more time to understand the car. Others, closer to the driver's entourage, began to question whether the car had been conceived without considering his driving style. There was talk of a structural conflict, a concept as serious as it was simple. The car and the driver did not speak the same language. And while all this was happening, the press began to ask uncomfortable questions. Had Hamilton made a mistake by leaving Mercedes? Was he overrated outside of his comfort zone? Had Ferrari signed a legend to turn her into a symbolic figure without giving her the tools to compete? The lowest point came in Abu Dhabi, the last race of the season. Hamilton finished in an opaque 8th position, without rhythm, without prominence. Leclerc, with a more natural approach to the car, managed to defend a better track position. But in the Ferrari pits, the atmosphere was not celebratory. It was resignation. To understand that an entire season had slipped away without even understanding why. What no one knew is that the answer was already on the way. In a matter of days, on that same Yas Marina circuit, during the post-season test, Ferrari was about to have a revelation that would completely change its vision of the car, the driver, and the future. The post-season test in Abu Dhabi, scheduled for December 9, 2025, was marked on the calendar as a technical procedure. Officially, the teams were to collect data for Pirelli and test development tires. But in reality, for Ferrari, that day would become a turning point hidden in plain sight. What Ferrari brought to the track was not a simple SF25. It was a mule car, a prototype in disguise. Under the body of the red car hid an experimental architecture based on the preliminary ideas of Project 678, the future car of 2026. The FIA had already approved more permissive regulations on active aerodynamics and chassis structure, and Ferrari wasted no time. They inserted parts, sensors, and a completely different configuration map to the base car. They were looking to gather information, but what they found was much more. Lewis Hamilton completed 73 laps that day, and with each one of them, something began to change. The engineers, sitting in front of the telemetry screens, watched in real time as the critical points that had hindered the entire season disappeared. The rear axle, historically unstable in the SF25 when required in medium traction, remained glued to the asphalt. There was no longer a need to correct with micro-adjustments every time I came out of a corner. Braking, which until then had been the main enemy of Hamilton's style, now became its greatest ally. I could finally brake late, put the pedal down, turn with confidence, and come away with traction. All the DNA that built his career was once again available in his hands. The sensors showed lateral stability under high load, more efficient weight distribution, and front axle behavior that responded with surgical precision to each steering wheel movement. Even the interaction with the tires, temperature, wear, and behavior under stress had improved substantially. It was as if the car understood its driver. But the biggest shock was not just seeing that the car ran better. It was the realization that this superior performance was not the result of specific optimization for Hamilton. It was, in essence, a natural progression of the 2026 design. Ferrari had not attempted to build a car for Lewis. What they discovered accidentally was that the new concept solved by itself the incompatibility problems that had been going on since January. At that moment, the conversations in the garage changed tone. Engineers stopped discussing configurations and started debating technical direction. Those responsible for the project realized that they had spent an entire year trying to adapt Hamilton to a car that structurally rejected it, and that the way forward was not to further adapt the SF25, but to accelerate the evolution towards the 678. Hamilton, when leaving the car, did not celebrate. He did not raise his fist nor make loud statements. What happened was much more revealing. He walked straight up to the data screen, asked to see the laps in detail, and after a few minutes of analysis simply said, "This is what I've been asking for all year." For those who were in that box, it was a moment of total clarity. There was no euphoria, but there was a sense of suppressed relief. Ferrari understood something fundamental, that the car of the future could not only be faster, but could finally unleash the true potential of the most valuable driver they had. What was experienced in that test was not a miracle. It was a course correction. And like every great revelation in Formula One, it came late, but still in time to change everything. The day after the test in Abu Dhabi, the atmosphere in Maranello was not usual. This was not an end-of-season meeting. It was something different. The data collected during the test was not archived as simple technical records. They became the central axis of a structural review within the chassis and aerodynamics department. The implications were profound, and the first to understand it was the technical management. Throughout the 2025 season, Ferrari had operated under the assumption that its car was competitive but demanding, that Hamilton's problems were adaptation, execution, confidence. But that analysis was incomplete. The SF25 had been designed to exploit a type of conduction, one that coincided with Leclerc's strengths, but that penalized Hamilton in its essence. The Yas Marina test not only revealed this incompatibility, offered a way out. The 2026 concept needed no cosmetic adjustments. It was already, by design, the structural solution that was so sought after. This car had more active downforce, lower sprung mass, greater longitudinal stability, and a wider thermal operating window for the tires. All of these factors, combined, allowed for a much more flexible driving range. In other words, a car that finally could be driven by Hamilton to the limit. The domino effect was immediate. The roadmap for the 678 single-seater was revised. The internal approval schedule was accelerated. And most importantly, for the first time since Lewis signed with Ferrari, people began to talk about him as the axis of the project. Not as an iconic figure, not like a marketing letter, but as the pilot around which the machine would be designed. This paradigm shift also opened a new quiet tension within the team. If the car is optimized for Hamilton, what implications will it have for Charles Leclerc? How will the monegasque driver respond, whose driving depends on a front axle that responds progressively, and not on a dynamic and aggressive rear axle? Will Charles accept an evolution of Ferrari that could displace him as a technical priority? The consequences of this discovery will not be immediately seen on the stopwatch. They will be seen in the decisions Ferrari makes in the coming weeks, in the wind tunnel, in simulation meetings, in the development priorities for 2026. But no one within the team doubts what they saw in Yas Marina anymore. That day, the driver and the car spoke the same language for the first time. And the echo of that conversation could mark the beginning of a new era for Ferrari. What happened in Abu Dhabi was not simply another test at the end of the calendar. It was a silent but forceful declaration that the future of Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton may be radically different from the dark beginning they experienced together in 2025. A car that seemed like an insurmountable barrier was transformed, without expecting it, into an opportunity for rebirth. And now, more than ever, Formula One is faced with a story that can redefine the narrative of this decade. And this is where you come in. I want to know what you think about all this. Do you think Ferrari is really going to bet the development of its 2026 car on Hamilton's strengths? Or will they end up, as so often in their history, trapped in infighting and political decisions that dilute their potential? Will Leclerc accept this change, or are we facing a future silent battle within the box itself? Leave it in the comments what you think about all this.